my idea was something like iTunes, but iTunes was way off. And fortunately, I got to fund DigiDesign, which are Pro Tools. I don't know if any of you do digital music, but this is still the standard for music. And I was able to fund a company that did that, so I was kind of excited about doing something with digital music. Another idea was I always thought that you should be able to invest and buy and sell stock, and then only when you pull the money back should you pay taxes. So I thought maybe you could create, and I knew you couldn't do that in the U.S., so I thought you could create an offshore stock market where people could go in, and there'd be one big corporation, and their business was in buying and selling stock, and how you did would determine how many shares of that company you had. And then only when you wanted to repatriate the money would you get it back. I still haven't been able to do that with anything, but I did help start Expert Financial, which is a company that was trying to cure the liquidity issues that we've had in the Silicon Valley. And incidentally, the liquidity issues are being addressed, but they're not totally there yet. This Jobs Act is now it's the Jobs Law. It's very promising, and I'm hoping that the SEC sees wisdom in it. But it's interesting. We all voted in a law, and now there are like 5 guys, girls, who are deciding whether or not we can have that law. I don't quite get that part. Why are the regulators controlling all of us? I don't get it. So that was another of the ideas. The third was a holographic image that moved, and then I quickly determined that the science wasn't there yet. And because I wanted a 3D image, I wanted us all to live in virtual space, and it turns out now some of those technologies are coming along, but none of them through holography. So I think I dodged a bullet there. And then the other was a submarine. I wanted to create a submarine company and go underwater because I thought, well, we got something in space. We're exploring space, and we're exploring land, and we're exploring all different parts of land, but we're not exploring under the sea. And then I thought, oh no, I love fish too much. I don't want to destroy them too. So I decided not to do it just for that reason. Then I realized that the investment banking business or the venture capital business was probably the right one for me, so that I could do a lot of these things, because I had the feeling more ideas would come, and I would not have a pure focus on any one of them. And so I joined Alex Brown, and it was an investment bank, and I worked with them, half venture capital, half investment banking, for 1 year. And then I was foolish enough to feel that I could go off and start it on my own. And I did it, but I had a little bit of a cushion because my father had $1 million roughly worth of stock and an SBIC, a small business investment company, which is a program that they have in Washington still to this day. And I was able to borrow $6 million against that, million or two in private stocks, so we didn't even know whether there was any value there. It turns out it wasn't much value there, but the $6 million I was able to go borrow and start putting it to work. And so I invested in a bunch of companies, and after 3 years, I was on the SBIC dirt list. I had gone through the watch list, and now I was on the dirt list, and they were about to call my loan. And I said, I flew back there and I said, no, you can't do that. You got to, keep my loan. I need my loan. And I need these companies, and they're doing great, and you know they're going to be some good winners here. And they held, to their credit, they held off, and they let me kind of roll. And then it turned out in 1991, which was, it took like 2 or 3 more years after I had begged, you know, don't pull the loan, to really get any kind of big returns. And we had 5 IPOs all in 1991, and the big one was Parametric Technology. It's still I think it's still the largest software company in New England. And so we made it was a long slog during that period. It could have gone either way. And fortunately it went the right way. And then I went from being on their dirt list, the SBIC dirt list, to being, now they had this picture of me on their wall as Venture Capitalist of the Year, and you go in the lobby, and I think it may still be there. And so then I had this great record, which I was then able to go parlay. I brought in a partner, John Fisher, and together we raised a $20 million fund, and there was some great drama there. We had a couple of things. When we were out raising money, we ran out of gas, and this is how partners try to figure it out. I said, you stay with a car, and I'll run. I was in great shape at the time. I'll go run to a gas station. We were on the freeway, so I ran down, I got the gas, I came back up, and the car was gone. So we were there pitching the Rhubarb Investment Club, a bunch of his father's friends, and we didn't get a dime from Rhubarb, but we had a great experience realizing that, you know, 2 partners who think very differently would somehow come together and do whatever it is we've done. And that was hilarious. We finally did connect. He figured out that he could coast the car down the hill. And so he was about another mile or so down the hill. And I came running back up to the top of the hill where the car was, and I had no idea. But anyway, we figured it out. Just barely made our plane back, and I had a great time. And that was just an example of what it's like going out there and trying to sell. We had one investor who said, yeah, we'd be interested, but only if you can get out here on Thursday. And I think it was Wednesday. They were in New York and we were here. And the fact that we got on a plane and went out and sold them before Thursday made it so that they actually ended up investing with us. Stanford, my alma mater, committed to us. They were going to commit $5 million of the $20 million. They were a big investor, and they said yes. And we came all the way up to the documents, and then they said no. And so all of a sudden, it all kind of was unraveling, and we were saved by Sid Bass, who's a billionaire from Texas, and he came in, and so we were able to raise that first fund, the first outside fund. And while we were, let's see, before this, when I was on the dirt list, I didn't really know what to do because I had run out of money. And so the Alaskan government had sent us a little letter. All the venture capitalists got a little letter saying, come up to Alaska and tell us how this works. So I thought, well, sure, I'll try that. I'll go to Alaska and I'll tell them how venture capital works. I didn't really know myself, but I knew as much as I thought, you know, I knew something. I had invested in companies. So I went up there, and it turned out that oil had fallen to $6 a barrel. Anybody know what oil's selling for now? About 94? Yeah. So it was at $6 a barrel, and they were panicking because in Alaska they were relying on oil revenues for they don't pay taxes there. It goes the other way. The money goes out to the Alaskan citizens, which is amazing to me why we aren't all starting our businesses up there. But they said, you know, hey, okay, we like what you said about venture capital. We want to do it. And I said, well, what do you mean you want to do it? Well, we have $6 million here, and we want to do it here in Alaska. And I said, I don't know if I want to do it in Alaska, but I got an Alaskan partner, and I said, we do $3 million up there and $3 million in the Silicon Valley, and so we end up figuring it out. And the $3 million we invested up there, we pretty much lost. There were some great opportunities that we passed on. One was salmon skin wallets, and one was fish head splitters. We invested in a low Earth orbit satellite launcher. And that one actually got us our money back. We had, it was hilarious. Alaska Men's Magazine. Alaskan Men. It was going to be like a calendar kind of thing. Very funny. And we didn't do that one. But we did some, and some worked out. Oh, there was a bone stretcher using the Elazarov technique, which is this Russian technique for what you do is if I sever my bone here and then I grow it a little bit at a time out, I can grow as much as 4 inches. And Russians use this for their basketball team, their Olympic basketball team. Sent them off to Siberia, and Elazarov cut these guys and pulled them. But everything grows. Your muscles grow around it, your tendons, everything grows. It's this weird magic thing. And that one actually did make us a little bit of money, too. So we did have some interesting experiences in Alaska. So what it did for me, though, is it helped me understand that there were, you know, other industries in other parts of the world. I was in this little microcosm of the Silicon Valley, which started out when I grew up here. Everything was apricots and you know, these hills, and there really wasn't much here. We had about 5 stores in Menlo Park, and Palo Alto was the big city, and it had, you know, 8 stores. And then we watched as this whole Silicon Valley really took off. And so I got this feeling that that what my dad and my grandfather had done really had a big impact on the valley, because they were putting money behind really bright people. And those bright people then made interesting things happen. And that optimism and confidence was something that really brought the place along. So then we... I had that fund, and my partner and I, John Fisher, who I had worked with at Alex Brown, who ran out of gas with, we raised that fund, and then we brought on Steve Jurvetson and raised another fund, and that third fund, we were saying, okay, all we're going to do is internet, and all these investors who were really interested in us thought, no, we're not going to do some fund that's just internet. And you know, by the way, it would be like funding a Bitcoin fund today. It was that obscure. There were maybe 1 or 2. I'm not sure Yahoo had been started yet, and I think Netscape was just in its infancy, and we just decided this is where we want to put all the money. And so we did. We raised the money, and that one went very well. We funded Hotmail. They were 2 young guys who got together and said, hey, you know, we want to do this web-based email. And then the thing was, they said, hey, we got it up. And I said, well, what's up? How did that work? And they said, well, now you can actually, on the web, you can send email to your friends. And I said, well, that's great. How are you going to let the world know about this? And they were thinking of marketing on TV or on billboards or whatever, and we had given them very little money. I didn't think that that was a good idea. It was going to cost too much money. So I said, isn't there some way to just get it out to all those people that are on the university internet or the defense internet? And they said, no, that would be spamming. So that was a new word I didn't know. I didn't know what spamming was, but it was sort of I thought it was a clever idea. And they said, no, we can't do that. And so then I said, okay, but you're giving this away. It's free. Can't you just, maybe you can put a little message at the bottom. Everybody's sending out letters to each other. And it used to be that people would write P.S., whatever. So I said, why don't you put P.S. I love you. Get your free email at Hotmail on the bottom of everybody's email. And they looked at me like, oh, God, of all the investors in the world, why did I end up with this guy? And I kept pounding, and I said, no, this is going to be great, because I'll send you an email. You'll send it to your friends. They'll send it to their friends. And then I started to think, wow, they'll send it to their friend. And, I got kind of carried away. And they said, well, no. And I kept pounding. They said, okay, but no P.S. I love you. And I thought, to this day, this would have been a much more peaceful and loving world if they had stuck with the P.S. I love you. But they did grow extraordinarily fast, 11 million users in 18 months. The founder was Indian, and he sent an email to his friend in India, and within 3 weeks we had 100,000 registered Hotmail users from India. And at that time, I don't think there were 100,000 computers in India. So this was exploding, and as you know now, Hotmail at its peak probably had 600 million users, and web-based email now counts for, I don't know, somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion people who now can communicate for free because of what these guys have done. And because I forced them to do this little, what we call viral marketing later. So we had this real window on the world. First of all, in order for me to communicate with somebody in India before, would have taken 3 very long trips to India. And before we could ever think to do business with anybody in India. And suddenly, with one email, we're able to do business with somebody in India. So I started to think, wow, this is interesting. Not only, and I'm a venture capitalist, so I was thinking, what happens to venture capital now? Not only do we not have a monopoly here in the Silicon Valley, which we used to have because all the disk drive makers were here and all the semiconductor makers and all the hardware makers, and they were all here. But you could start a business without selling anything but electrons to people anywhere, and it could happen anywhere. And by then, there was a search engine, and so we started to think, wow, everybody's going to know everything. And so we started to think about how does venture capital change. And so I set up, in effect, a franchise model, and I went around and we set up venture funds in all sorts of different places all around the globe. And I'm glad we did, because in 2000, the market came crashing down, and all the money that was invested in venture capital from 2000 to now has been sort of dead in the water money. It's overall, the industry's been pretty much flat. But the money we put internationally has done extraordinarily well. So that's good for you guys. You're Thunderbird, right? We ended up funding Skype, which was a similar model to the Hotmail model, and Baidu, which was the search engine for China, and those 2 companies really have made it so that we have been able to stay in the venture business during a very, very tough time for the rest of the industry. So then we have muddled along and keep muddling. But I think our industry is about to change again. I think we've got another big fundamental change happening. First of all, if you create a product today that goes on the iPhone or whatever, it will, it can proliferate around the world faster than ever before. And it almost doesn't matter what language you create it in, because it will get translated and it'll move very quickly. So I'm not sure that venture capital has to be all over the world. I think we can be more virtual. I think we can actually handle things. It's nice to be close to your companies, but I think we can be virtual, and I think entrepreneurs should know that distribution is going to be a commodity. Distribution of anything that goes on an iPhone or an iPad, or anything that any software that you can spread, any apps, whatever, they go much, much faster than before. And so you can grow a business much faster than before. And the other thing is that I think it kind of gets to be, you hope that you catch a big fad, but you also hope that you become a platform. Let me explain. I think fads might be things like Foursquare and Pinterest, whereas a platform is Facebook and Google. And I think you want to capture people's imagination, but then you want other people to build onto your system. So this is if you happen to be looking in the IT space. I think that is that's something I would keep in mind, that you want to build something that's really exciting that then other people can add to. That seems to be the model that seems to be working the best. Actually, it makes me think of a couple of things. One is about great business models. eBay was a great business model, but what eBay did really beautifully was PR. Do you remember when they used to say, you know, oh, look, I was able to buy a nuclear power plant on eBay. I was able to buy, you know, a plot of land in Tennessee on eBay. I was able to buy a tractor on eBay. I was able to buy whatever on eBay. And they made each one of those a new story, so the press was just loving it. They were building it up. And so that was sort of a great way to market or whatever for in an inexpensive way and really spread very quickly. Another business model I've always admired was Amazon, because they actually took a business that used to require a lot of physical space and a lot of inventory, and they got rid of all the inventory and all the physical space, and there are no accounts receivable, no inventory. So look for businesses where you can fill up the balance sheet and the income statement with zeros. Yeah, not cash or sales or so then, okay, the other ways venture capital is changing now is I think the Jobs Act could change us, particularly at the early stage. Now they've cut some of the legs off of the Jobs Act. They've made it a little bit painful, because if you raise more than $500,000 in a year, you have to be audited. That's expensive. It does sort of feel like the government is, they're getting in everybody's business at the worst time. You know, we've got a tough economy, and do we really need somebody looking over our shoulder all the time while we're trying to make, you know, create jobs and build an economy and whatever? But now is the time where they start feeling like they have to look over your shoulder. And so anyway, they're adding all these little problems to the Jobs Act. But Jobs Act really does have a lot of great features to it. This general solicitation is really a great thing, which is you will now be able to sell stock to anybody. I mean, you will be able to promote stock to anyone, and just as long as you're just selling it to the qualified institutions and the individuals. And I think that could be a powerful thing. That could change a lot of our business. And I'll tell you why I think venture capital is going to change significantly because of that and one other thing called crowdfunding. We have, I funded this, I put some money into this great guy who built a watch where you could read your email off of it. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. It was called Impulse. And he was, nice guy, everything's great. And then he said, boy, things are tough. Now I'm running out of money and I'm not quite sure what to do. And then he put the watch on Kickstarter. And he just put a great video together. He put the watch on Kickstarter. And he raised $10 million on Kickstarter. And $5 million of that is just free money. And the other $5 million is pre-orders. So he got that money from donations and customers. And he's totally off to the races. He's got I think he's going to start shipping. It's called I want to say Pebble, but it's not. It's the Pearl. Pearl, or anyway, this new watch. I think it's called the Pearl. And it's fantastic. It was like magic. But then I started to think, wow, that crowd. The crowd is powerful now. The crowds are now overthrowing bad governments in the Arab Spring countries, and they're forcing governments to compete with each other. Crowds are powerful now. I think that's something, maybe if you take away nothing else from this random place you showed up and whatever, is that somehow motivate the crowds. If you can do that, you've got a big potential business, or at least you can, change the world in some way or another. And then that leads me to the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll just open it up for questions. I started thinking, you watch the government and you see that they're saying, tax the rich are bad, look at all these thieves, they're taking money, whatever. And it makes me think of when I took these trips to Russia, and the Bolsheviks came in. The Bolsheviks came in, and they all said, oh, the rich are bad, tax the rich, go, get rid of the rich, get rid of business, business is bad. And they did basically what's going on now in Washington. Tax it, and that was about 90 years ago. And for 75 years, business was illegal in Russia. You think that would never happen here, but if you watch, slowly but surely, there are just so many things. They're just adding more and more of these things to make it tougher and tougher to do business here. Anyway, business became illegal in Russia. So then they finally said, oh no, this free market, this is a great thing. The free market's fine now. So then, first of all, the Russians don't really trust their government. They're saying, really? Am I going to be able to do this and not get my head taken off? But then they do it for a while, and then some of them are successful. But think about it. You're an entrepreneur and you're in Russia. Your parents, their parents, and their parents' parents, their parents' grandparents, all believed that business was illegal. So where's your role model? There's nothing to go on. So these poor entrepreneurs in Russia are just, having such a difficult time. But there is a lot of hope, and I know that at least Medvedev was very encouraging of bringing venture capital and entrepreneurship to his country, and so maybe a little at a time they'll come along. We've had 3 false starts in Russia. It hasn't worked out yet, but we're hoping this next iteration is going to work out. One of the false starts was we had a fund raised, ready to put it to work, and all the money was coming from this one group. And it turned out that was the group that that was funded by Khodorkovsky, and when Khodorkovsky got thrown into jail, that money just went gone. So it's still a moving target there. So anyway, business is good. Business is great. And going out there and doing something for somebody or for a customer is a great thing. It's a great thing to pursue. If you and I did a deal, we'd both be better off. If we did a deal with him, all three would be better off. And that is what business is all about. You do deals. You work together. And think of all the deals with all the customers that Apple Computer has done. And think of how much of an effect that has had on the world. And you see these nonprofits who come and they say, "Oh, well, we're gonna go and drill wells in Uganda and help these poor families who don't have fresh water." And then you realize that you go to Uganda and they've got an iPhone and they're sitting there looking up, and they go to Google and they figure out how to drill a well, and they drill their own well. And it has a much bigger, think of what an impact on all 7 billion of us that these companies, Apple, Google, even Hotmail, have had on people. The knowledge that's been spread. And all that comes from for-profit enterprise. It's a great thing. So I realized that there is not enough of that out there, and not enough people thinking that way. And so I created a school called the Draper University of Heroes. And if you're still under 24 years old, anybody still under 24 years old? Okay. You can apply to Draper University of Heroes. It's an 8-week program. And actually, if it's fall, winter, spring, we kind of stretch it, so sometimes they're up as high as 28. And what we've done here is we've completely changed everything. We don't have any faculty, we just have inspirational speakers that come in, and then we break the students into teams of 5. There's something magic about a team of 5. If there are 10 of you, 5 of you can hide and nobody will know the difference. And if there are 2 of you, sometimes you don't feel like you got enough oomph to make something happen. So we break you into teams of 5. And then, when you play volleyball, both teams serve at the same time. So there are 2 balls in the air. And when we change the rules to Monopoly and baseball and everything else. We have human chess. We do everything in a wacky way so that people realize that the world is to be changed. And they graduate with the degree of change agent. Go out there and change the way the world works. Go be something take it all in, but don't be reactive to it. Go after it. And if so, the thing that should totally inspire you is when somebody says, it can't be done. Or, oh, we've tried that, it never works. Or, you just don't understand. Or whatever. Anyone who ever gives you that should motivate you so hard to do so much more. The greatest people are the ones who basically ignored everybody who told them no. But they listened very carefully to the criticism so that they could adjust and say, the reason this person is saying no is because they look at the world this way and they have a good point, so how do I get around that? So you have to start thinking about the world as, here it is, let's see how we can change it, Hey, you guys sit over there, or you guys do this. Think about moving people, changing the way we all operate, make our lives better. The other thing we do there, we have survival training. It's a business school, but it's really mostly, there's cold calling, survival training. Survival training, the people, after they've been through Draper University, they will have learned yoga, painting, cooking, riflery, suturing, a whole bunch of things. Because what I think is, you got to try everything. And the more you try, the more creativity goes into your brain when you're trying to solve a very straightforward problem. If you are only going through your life in one dimension, you will have a much more difficult time solving difficult problems, because you'll bang your head against the wall just the way everybody else is. But if you go after that in another way, and you think about things in, if you're all sitting around and you've all had a very similar experience, and you all say, oh, well, this is the only way we can do it, and it doesn't seem to be working, there should be somebody in there that knows how to deep sea dive, or fly an airplane, or cook a casserole, that throws a new thing into the mix and powers the discussion, throws the discussion a new curveball. It's great in negotiating too. I was just negotiating with somebody, and he grew up. He started out when he was 13 years old. He started out as a repo man. He repossessed cars when he was 13 years old until he was about 18, and without even having a driver's license. So in the middle of the negotiation, I said, okay, I'll do this, but, and it's a very serious time. We're all thinking, okay, this is really a tough negotiation. I said, I'll do this, but when we close this deal, you and I have to go do a repo. He just cracked up. But it was like, okay, we have to write that into the contract. And it was like, all of a sudden, everybody realizes that the contract's not everything. The relationship's important. How the deal's going to work moving forward's important. How we get along is important. It's all a part of the whole thing. It is interesting how in a negotiation, and I'm sure that you've learned this in negotiation class at Thunderbird, that throwing out some odd thing can help you win what it is you're really after. You could be a stickler on one thing that you don't even care about, but you just say, and I have to have the piano. Whatever it is, I have to have the piano. And whether you get the piano or not, it's like, God, he just won't budge on a piano, And whether you get it or not, it's like they need to come to you in some other way. And they realize that you're looking at it more as a life experience than a zero-sum game. So after that, the school is in San Mateo, and it's a boarding school. You can't even bring a car, and and then after 8 weeks there, if you pitch a venture capitalist for 2 minutes at the very end, not one, but a whole panel of them, and then a few of them ended up getting funded this last time, and then we actually have an ongoing program where you can move to sort of an incubator kind of thing if your business really looks like it's going to start taking off. So it's kind of a good thing for any of you who really want to go out there and start a business. It'll give you the confidence you need. That's one thing we really do promote, is that you'll have to speak in front of an audience every day. We also teach karaoke. They're some very important things. Teach how to deal with the press. A lot of the practical things that you run into. So with that, I've covered a long, wide swath. Why don't you throw out a few questions? Yeah.
So yesterday we had speakers was talking about that right now the most two directions of venture capital is either investing in people or product. So what do you think?
Yeah, that actually that's a long argument that goes back, 40 years. And it's not you, and it's people, product. If you want to go with some of the real winners. It has been one or a couple who have really focused on the people, and a couple who have really focused on the market, not the product, the market. And maybe it's the product market fit. But there is a little bit of a skill, and I didn't learn it in business school, but maybe you guys have, is how do you size a market? How do you look at a market? And that's a very valuable way to look at a business. How big could this be? And then you have to look at it in a couple of different ways. First, how big are all the companies that are in it right now that you plan to eliminate? And and if you took all of the customers and you sold them one of whatever you're selling them and multiply that by the price, then maybe that's how, and how often they would be buying it. That's another way of cutting the market. That's called the bottoms up, and the other one's called the top down. We do a lot of that now. And it's the reason we do it is not really because we're getting away from just focusing on the people. It has a lot to do with that we are now inundated with entrepreneurs. There are so many entrepreneurs that we need to figure out how to cut it. And so we are always cutting it by market. First, just not big enough. And you figure, it's your life. Go out there and do something big. You think you ought to do something big? More fun, more interesting, more challenging. Go do something big. So we're looking for the people who are going to do something big. And then when they come into the office, boy, I'll tell you, enthusiasm plays a big role, and passion and focus, and this is all I was put on the earth to do, and this is why, and you see that as a venture capitalist, and you can't help but investing. Yeah.
So what's your principle for the investment, especially when other people think, maybe it cannot work?
Oh, yeah, we had trouble with that because we had as our partnership grew, there were more votes, and it made it so the decisions were more mealy-mouthed. They're more like, milk toast. They were not wow, I really think this might work, and now I'll invest. It wasn't that feeling. So I think that we have to keep, we're reiterating now. We don't know is the answer. I mean, that's a tough question. We don't really know. There's a lot of art to it and a little bit of science to it. And I would say that for a company to be successful, if you were to talk to 5 different people outside of the company, if none of them think it's a good idea, it probably isn't. If 5 of them think it's a good idea, it probably isn't. Because if it's so obvious to everyone, then it's too late. Someone's already done it. This is for an entrepreneur. Now, for a big business, sure, if all 5 think it's a good idea, that's terrific. Probably do very well because they have huge distribution, plenty of cash, they can win in the market, whatever. But if you're starting something from scratch, you've got to be thinking 5 or even 10 years out as to when the world will recognize your genius. And that usually means that out of those 5 people, it's 1 or 2 that think it's a good idea, and 3 passionately argue against it. And the reason I say passionately is if it has to be a passionate discussion. Whenever we've had a passionate discussion, one way or another, in our partnership, that business is a good business. So the way we really should be judging these things is we should put a decibel meter in our conference room, and the louder we're screaming at each other, the more likely it should be that we fund it. Yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned a little bit about you came up with a lot of new ideas during the school time.
Yeah.
So my question is, how could you come up with those ideas? Because I think everyone in this room, we all want to be entrepreneur. But sometimes we're still struggling with like, we want to have something new, something different, something that we can approach the market.
This is great. Okay, there are lots of good brainstorming techniques, okay? Really good ones. One is you sit around with a few people and you just write everything, every idea they have on the wall. That's a really good thing to do. Here's another thing. Put two things together and see how they might meld. So like this and a clock. Then you go, oh, well, why don't we put a clock on this? And then throw something else in there, and a coaster. So let's make a coaster that you can write on and is also a clock. It's a thing, and then you say, okay, start using that. Make your mind more flexible. Start thinking more flexibly, and then go look at big bureaucratic markets. Okay, go find the markets that are the most unfair. Okay, right now I would say finance. That would include venture capital and investment banking and banking. I would say those three would be ripe for the picking. I think medicine is, where there's a total chaos going on there, there's a huge opportunity for a clear-thinking entrepreneur to come in there and change it. Medicine, all over medicine, from drug design to the administration of medicine. I would say in any industry that's been sort of sleepy for a long time and they've just done it the same way, it's been the same companies forever, I think of like the garbage business. You know, that's probably ripe for the picking. Nobody's really thought to take it down. And then, I mean, here's another one. Government. Government's so messed up. And they're having to compete now. You know, I don't know, you from Singapore?
I'm from Thailand.
From Thailand? I've noticed that now we've got a ranking of which countries to go do business in. You know, if I were just starting out today, I would look at that ranking and I would say, well, the U.S. is now 5th. U.S. used to be 1st, but the U.S. is now 5th. There's Singapore, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Finland, I guess. I think it's Finland. Yeah. Isn't that weird? Because it's a socialist area. So these are the 4 places that are the best to do business. So then you kind of go, oh, well, that really matters. And then I think other governments are going to see that and try to improve themselves. But if you can somehow fix bad trends in government, I think you could do extraordinary things. There are, and then there are other things to think about, and that is first look for customers who are unhappy, and they say, we really ought to have and then take that about 5 years out or 10 years out. Say, well, okay, you could have this, but what could you have in 5 or 10 years if all these things move in this direction? And another way to look at it is to go, look, and this is how we ended up funding Tesla. I saw that these 2 lines were crossing, and here are the 2 lines. One is the electric car was still a little limited on how far it could go, but it was faster, it had better performance, it was cheaper to operate, and then some of these cars out here, and then all of a sudden I rode in one of these it wasn't even an electric car, it was just sort of a wireframe thing that I got into, and it took off like a rocket. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, and I thought, oh my gosh, there is no gas-powered car that can go this fast. And he goes, yeah, of course, no gas-powered car, because this is all electric, and there's better torque, and there's whatever. And I thought, oh my gosh, there is a new technology that can now be applied that where it doesn't have to be a tree hugger that decides to buy one of these electric cars. In fact, I want one. And as soon as you start feeling that way, you go, oh, well, this could be a whole new thing. And all you need is a could be. It doesn't have to be for sure. In fact, I'll tell you, I think the education system's totally been screwed up by the A. And here's the A. Here's the A. Don't make any mistakes. That's your A. And you get an A. You don't make any mistakes. You get an A. Now, at Draper University, if you fail spectacularly, your team gets more points. If you succeed spectacularly, your team gets more points. If you do the job, or even do the job well, nothing happens. So I think that's a better way to school. I think it's, and I think in the real world, there are no real rules. And you've got to apply that thinking to the real world. The more I go around the world, I realize that the rules here do not apply in other places. The rules in Singapore don't apply to Russia. The rules in Russia don't apply to Saudi Arabia. There are no rules. We're trying to all sort of survive on this planet together, but there are no rules. And you should look at the world in that way.
Just one quick following question. In your experience, either you think by yourself or you see some other people's idea because you're a VC, which type of ideas that is always, not always, but like better or more successful? I mean, one is they think something out because they think this one will fit to customer needs or something that they think is good, or they see someone has a problem and they think about how to fix it and they have some idea come up.
It's usually the second part, the second one, but the real one is the entrepreneur who goes, let's see what happens when I do that. Okay, let's sell this product. Let's see, hey, you like this? And then you talk to somebody and they go, you know, these edges are a little sharp. And then you go, okay, we're going to smooth those edges. And I don't think we need paper here. I mean, it should be electronic. So then you kind of go, okay, well then we need an iPad in there. And then you go, how do you like it now? And then the guy says, I don't know. This logo, I'm not sure I want to put that logo that big there. I think it should be down here in the corner. And then so you iterate. You fail fast and you iterate. At Draper University, we put our hands on our heart every morning and say, well, first we say we'll promote freedom at all costs, but down the road, down the line, we say, and I will fail and fail again until I succeed. And I think that's the way you've got to look at it if you're going to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. Now, if you're in a big company, you don't get to fail very often. That's a little bit more like school. Yes.
You mentioned Bitcoin earlier, and I'm curious to know your own perspective about that.
Oh, that's so cool. Bitcoin. Here, you know, I said government might be one of the places where you go to compete. Bitcoin, in effect, it's a currency, and it competes with all those other currencies that are currently failing. And I think there is some real value to something like that. I think it's great. I love when somebody comes up with something like that. So it's not just Bitcoin. These guys at Blue Seed, have you heard about Blue Seed? Okay, well they're setting up a whole city, or trying to, 11 miles offshore, and then they're gonna have people who don't have green cards. They're gonna all do their work offshore, and then they're gonna take leave over the weekend, and they're gonna come to the Silicon Valley and use their passport, and then they're gonna go back out there, and then they're gonna do their work. I mean, these are guys who are solving the fact that our government is just so lost.
It's not too dissimilar from your tax island idea, is it?
No, very similar to my tax island. Yeah. But, well, that's another one. In fact, I'm playing around with another thing, sort of competition. All of our states have, in effect, they do compete with each other. I would rather be paying my taxes in Texas than in California. But California has all the great weather, but I thought within a state, government should have to compete. So, like the county should be able to choose which state government they want to use. So you could have one or two different states within a geographic territory like California. So I'm kind of thinking that may be a movement that starts. We'll see if it's a move. I'm thinking of actually creating the state of Silicon Valley. Oh, that's the other thing. Go after a big one, and you will have so much more fun. Just go after just something where you might piss some people off, but it's so worth it. And the end goal is so worth it. If you can get there, if you actually can accomplish what you are trying to achieve, it's a great feel. Of course, once you've done it, and then it's over, you kind of go, oh, now what? There is a period of your life that if you do accomplish your goals, you're going to be going, oh my God, what do I do now? But I'm sure you'll think of something. Questions from the women? Yeah.
Now that you're a big name and everybody knows you already, how was it with the big name? How did you connect to all these entrepreneurs? Like now everybody can connect to you, but initially at the beginning, how was it?
I knocked on doors. I looked for new real estate constructions, and there was a lot of it going on here. And whenever I saw a company, I'd drive around, and I'd see a company that said something software, and then I'd go and I'd knock on the door. And I think the other thing I did was I went to all the other venture capitalists. Venture capital had been in the world for 20, 30 years before that. I went to all of them and I said, anything you turn down, anything that looks too early for you, send it my way. And they loved that. They thought, oh yeah, that's a great way. We don't have to turn them down. We can just send them to you. Yeah.
The dream job for most of these guys would be, well, first of all, to start their own thing, but then second, to work in venture capital somehow. Do you have any thoughts on career direction? I know.
Yeah, it's very tough for us. We don't hire very many people. But here's what we do is we do acknowledge when somebody just keeps knocking on our door with yet another business plan. And or they come to us with, so if you did want to be a venture capitalist rather than an entrepreneur, which I'm not sure I would recommend right now because it's so well known around, unless you got a new geographic spot or maybe a new industry spot where you have a specific unfair advantage. I don't know whether I would jump into the business now. I think there are better models for companies and for finance. I think I would try to eliminate venture capital or change it or do something. I think I'd go after it that way. But the way we have often hired people is they just keep coming. They say, hey, I got another one for you. Here's an interesting deal. And then you start having some real respect for people. They brought you 5 things, and you funded 2 of them, and you go, oh, this guy we really ought to consider. So I think that might be it. But if you are, any questions, I'm tim@dfj.com, and you can just, email, particularly if you are, and if you email, make sure you add everything that you need to add to it. So if you're saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, you better have a resume on that. And if you you are looking for a job, that resume should be on it should be in your signature. It should be on every email you send, it should be on your Facebook page, it should be everywhere. And if you have a business plan, don't just say, hey, I'm starting a business, would you be interested in something like this? Just say, here's my business plan, or here's my deck, or here are my slides, or whatever it is. Just make sure that all the information is there, so that when I look at it, I'm not just looking at a quick letter. It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, catch my attention with a letter, but then you really want to supply as much information as you can, so that we're not going to read it all, but we're going to read the parts that matter to us. So second years, go out there and knock them dead. And if there are no jobs for you, you are an entrepreneur.
You either make or buy. Right?
That's right. And it's a great option, and it's a great career. And I just ran into a guy that worked with us for a while, and then for one reason or another, he went out and he started a business. And I'm really thrilled with him because his career wasn't going in the right direction here, and he said, it's not for me, we're going to go do this. Well, good. Thanks for listening. And, Tim at dfj.com or draperuniversity.com. Oh, definitely go to draperuniversity.com and look at the video. It's hilarious.
We already saw you in action with the song.
The Wristmaster.
So
that was fun. I wrote that and then got a very famous rock star, who I'm not allowed to say, to do the song, and I did the lyrics and he did the song. But then after that, people took those lyrics, and there have been like 14 songs written. There's one in Chinese, there's one Euro, it's sort of a Euro techno thing going on, and I think there are even more that I don't even know about. There's somebody's converted the lyrics to Spanish, but I haven't gotten around to singing.
You could probably do it in Hindu. Right?
Yeah, we don't have a Hindu version.
So, all right, well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Though you don't need this.
MBA in a day. That's the amount of time I have. I have to go get it.
But thank you for being so generous and for hosting our lunch. And
that's great. Yeah, good. I'm glad you came.
Thanks, guys. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, we have a additional speaker at 2 o'clock at Tech Shop, so we need to jam over there as soon as we can. And then all the other sessions are over there. To make it easier, when you exit left and go down the stairs. And you'll be dumped right outside, and you don't have to go through some of there's some security things they've got. So just head out left, and then we'll see you back at Tech Shop.